Hello and welcome to Future Innovators. My name is Brandon Pierce. I'm the CEO and founder of Future Innovators. And welcome to our first DIY STEM kit tutorial. We've been buying these kits and using them at events as well as in workshops or in free-for-all STEM activities. And so we will be doing a tutorial on how to build this wireless remote control car. Links will be in the video to show where you can purchase this if you're watching this on YouTube and would like your child at home to purchase this. This video is also used for a partnership we are working on, getting everything finalized to put STEM activities in after-school programs. And so this will be part of our curriculum. I do want to state that the mission statement of Future Innovators is to engage, educate, and advance the skill sets of tomorrow's future innovators. So I'm going to go ahead and take this out of the box here. Now, these step-by-step instructions, they are mostly pictures, as you can see, for the most part. They've got some wording. It's got some explanation here of how to do it. Basically, with any kit of this sort, it's always red to red, black to black. And in the event that you have an on and off switch, you typically have two red wires. The on and off switch has two plugs on the end, and you put red on one, red on the other, and make sure they do not touch. But in this case, it's literally just battery packs as well. So I'm going to have these this here for me to see, and I'm going to walk you all through this here. All right, so I'm going to get everything out of the bag and explain what we have. These bags are a little hard to open sometimes, just where the tops stick together. You have the battery pack. You have this one right here. Look on here to find the actual title for this one. And I am going to be guessing that this one is going to be on the bottom of the car. And yes, so this one will be on the top of the car. Now the way to know this is it's got some stuff that looks like little knobs basically that will go forward and backwards. So I'm gonna set this over here. This is your car frame. This is the remote control frame. See how this has two dots? That's where those controls will come through. Now it comes with some zip ties to make things easy. You can use your own zip ties as well. It has a battery pack for the controller also. It has 4 wheels. It has four wheels, some more zip ties, a small baggage of bolts and screws, and little plastic pieces. We'll show what that goes on later. This right here is honestly perfect how this is packed. Does not make anything loose. You've got a gear motor. It also comes with a really awesome screwdriver, so there will be a collection of these. The more we buy, the more we'll have of these screwdrivers. Comes with some wiring already pre-cut. If you notice on most of these battery packs, it has it where it can be basically you just grab that part and pull off of it there. Let me see if I can focus it in a little bit. And it's hard to focus on it, but this little part can be pulled off. Most of these battery packs has it. Now in the event that some of these wires like these are extremely short, they are hard to connect in most cases. Really what you just do is take you a small knife, typically a scalpel or some sort of a razor, and you just barely scrape it to where you can cut it and then dig your fingernail in it. And when you dig your fingernail in it, just pull really hard. Do be careful. Sometimes these can poke into your fingers. So when working with kids, it's always best to keep that in. You have the RC motor for the car. Now, if you notice on the end of it has this little white tip, that's going to be used to work into the gear motor right here. They will basically line up and connect. In this case, there is a rubber band for the kit, but I do not see it. Actually, this is very interesting. And I don't think it dropped out, so we will cross that bridge when we come to it. Because it does show a rubber band, but it looks like it might be potentially missing, so we may have to improvise. Actually, 1 second here. Let me be right back. Now, to potentially improvise, this is one I already built. I built it for basically an event. See that rubber band there? That rubber band just basically goes around for the motor. So I will potentially be using this, but this is a final version that is also beat up. Kids stepped on it with the controller. Now, I will say these wirings are kind of difficult to hold in place and screw. So this video may be a little additional long, but it's gonna have your step-by-steps. You may potentially need to purchase more of these rubber bands. That way, in the event that these kits do not come with it, we will have them. Now, however, this is honestly the first kit of these that I've ever had without a rubber band to come in them. And I do not see it laying around anywhere, and I'm pretty sure I did not drop it. So I do believe some of the DIY material kits that basically come with like a bunch of these, and RC motors, and different stuff will have some in it. Now you'll notice these little tiny black pieces that are hollow. Basically, those are gonna go over your wiring. It's really simple to hold them on. It is needed. I do typically recommend having some extra duct tape around just because it is definitely needed. Or most likely you can use electrical tape. Super easy, anything works. I've even used craft tape before. Now, one thing I do notice on this, there are 2 bars, the exact same. There have been situations with BattleBots to where one bar is larger than the other. So always make sure to check on the size and pay attention to details on there. Let's set that right here. And we basically have more of the plastic wire coverings. So I'm just gonna set those over here. And then we have the on and off buttons, we have the controller buttons that will basically go in. So first things first, let's go to getting this started. Now it starts out, I always typically just take these, set them to the side at first until you get to where you're going. And so it basically has the first step as assembling everything. It's really good to know. I'm gonna go off of this for a very simple case measure. Definitely need to figure out a way to edit these videos to where slow parts are in and out. Yeah, cause see, it just goes from 0 to 100 out of nowhere. So, the way it's looking like is that it's going to have, this one is also different than the other one in some sense. It doesn't appear to have all of the extra shielding. So this one had a bunch of shielding here. This other one is not going to come in with that. So I do see why these instructions are much different. And so basically step 1, prepare all the pieces. I've got that laid out. Step 2, it shows us how to get the circuit board started. And so let's go ahead and start with the circuit board. I'm going to slide these over since we are starting with the one on the RC car side. All right. Because in the step 3, it says that we should use a lighter to peel off all the wire, leave about 1 centimeter. What I do is I just basically take this, pinch it really hard, and pull. Typically comes off very easy. And so I'm gonna go ahead and do that to all of these, to where I just pinch with my nail into my finger and pull really hard. Sometimes it doesn't always work, and you just gotta keep going around in circles, and you finally get it. And so I'm going to do that to all of these because these wirings will not be large enough. And so some of them are harder, as you can see, and you just got to kind of pinch and turn, pinch and turn. And so you're just pinch, pull, turn, pinch, pull, turn. Very easy to do. Better than having to try and do a knife and frail the wires. You just got to be I'm careful not to pull too hard. And so I've got those basically extended out. Now, as obvious, black to black, red to red. So what I'm going to do, so I'm going to go ahead and slide these off. And then as I'm doing this, because it is very easy to forget, go ahead and take this one. And before those wires get all frailed up and bent, go ahead and slide your plastic tubing over the red and black wires. Now, why do I do this? It happens very commonly that I forget and I wire up the wires, and then I am either stuck just putting electrical tape on them, or makes it harder to go in because right now the wires are extremely straight. So the benefit being that doing this ahead of time kind of prevents any extra steps. Plus, it's also a specialized need in wiring that typically there's standardized wiring covers for like your outlets and stuff. Even though they do use electrical tape, this is just an extra measure cover to help the wires be protected and keep electrical currents going. Alrighty, and so now the key part here is that on the diagram, it mentions using for this one, the one that has the metal piece on the end. If you notice, I just jumped ahead, didn't take a look at that, and I put it on the one without the metal piece on the end. Very big key difference there. Reason being is that how it is and what it is used for. This one we are wiring to the wireless receiver on the car that will connect with the wireless receiver put in the remote. And so I'm gonna go ahead and basically do the same thing again of putting the plastic pieces onto these ahead of time. I am getting just started in these videos, so I am hoping that I can edit out some of these slow parts, you know, cut and paste. But as we are learning, there's a good chance that some of these videos will just have small and slow gaps. So feel free to fast forward as needed. All right, so I have both of those on. Now I'm gonna look at this and I notice that on here shows that red wire and black wire bending backwards. So I'm gonna bend it this way. Now when I'm twisting these, I'm gonna take, since this one is much more of a stiff wire and this is a lighter wire, I'm gonna basically hold it at that base and just wrap and spin it. And then I'm gonna be careful not to jab up under my fingernails and pinch the harder part back and kind of just give everything a good last twirl. Any extra wires, put it towards the middle. And the reason you wanna do that and pinch it tight is that you're gonna basically take the plastic piece, you're gonna slide it over. And when you slide it over, you wanna make sure that the wiring goes in and that it doesn't lose your electrical connection. Slide those two pieces over the wiring. As you notice, it's a little difficult going in. I'm gonna make sure to go ahead and wrap these. Now, typically you can go ahead and put the electrical tape on at this point for each wire, but with working with kids and also these being smaller cars, just keep the electrical tape off just to make sure everything works. Now in a situation like this one, to where this one is not really wrapping up around the wiring too well, more than likely will, just because that way it'll hold. The electrical tape over the top is really a way to ensure that the wires stay tight and together. However, there can be a lost connection inside and you have to go and redo everything. So I'm gonna slide this one up over as well. Now I notice that this one's having a little bit of a hard part staying down, so I am definitely gonna use tape. It's already coming out before I even put it into the wiring. And so I'm gonna tear off a small piece of electrical tape. This depends on how you would like to use the tape, and I'm gonna use a very extremely small piece. I'm gonna stick it straight on there, flip over the little excess over the top, and just roll it as tight as I can, ensuring that the wiring stays contact. And I'm just gonna just twist that tape around, cover it. Now I could potentially slide the other one over it, but it's not going to go. But it doesn't cause any harm for you to have that piece there, electric tape over. Something like this, I typically take the electric tape over it, make it tighter. Alrighty. Now next, it shows us wiring up the RC motor. So let's take a look here. And so the RC motor, there's not a standardized size, but if you hold it upside down, you want to make sure that these two things are facing upwards. The reason you can tell the specifics is by how those little two metal pieces on the end look. And if you look at step 6 and notice that those wirings are facing upwards when we attach this to the frame. So from here, I'm going to go in and I'm going to attach the red wire on. Basically, when I say attach the red wire on, let me see if I can focus this in here. I'm going to stick that wiring right through the back of it, and then I'm going to take it and twist it around as much as I can. Now on these, typically it's a good standard to leave them just connected. That way later on you can make sure it works by powering it. That way in case there's any lost connection. Typically, if you can tell there's a good knot, go ahead and just add a piece of the electrical tape over it. It just holds that current in. And basically I'm gonna do the same thing with the other side as I'm gonna put it through. And then basically to ensure connection, I'm gonna twist it under and around. And then I'm gonna take the wiring and twist it tight as well. These things can lose connection very well. This wiring on this one, I will say, is much stronger than the previous RC car that I've done. However, the structure is a little bit different. And so I'm just gonna take a small piece of electrical tape, make sure my wires are sticking straight, and just attach it and fold it behind as needed. What that will do is that will at least ensure that the electrical current is staying on the RC motor. From there, it shows that I'm going to basically wire the green one to the black and the yellow to the red. Now, funny thing is in their diagram, it shows the green on the right over here, and it shows the yellow over here, which is interesting. So either they've crossed them, which is typically potentially possible just to keep the wiring more straight. But if you notice here, the wires are that way. So don't really need to cross them. I'm just gonna do it as needed. So it is green to black and yellow to red. So again, now these I'm noticing are a little bit shorter. These are finer. So I'm gonna take this one, hold the one that has the more stiff wiring, take the other one and wrap it around. Now, if you notice, I just forgot to put over those things ahead of time. See how easy that is to forget? So instead of de-wiring it and messing up my wire, I'm just gonna basically break this electrical tape that's been kind of squeezed by me pulling it. It is a good standard to have some scissors for doing the wiring, but however, can make it get stuck to the scissors. And so I'm just gonna take this, put it on here, look at my wiring, flip that over the top, and just basically roll to where everything's tucked in. I personally like the electrical tape just a little bit better than the plastic pieces, just because these things can slide on and off if you don't make it tighter with the electrical tape. But the electrical tape is honestly a personal favorite. It's based off how everyone would like to do it. And so I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Granted, I am personally choosing to do electrical tape here because these wires are extremely important. These connections are easy, something to fix, and you typically can have some excess wiring that you can add. Not as common, but I do keep excess wiring, and we are definitely going to be including extra wiring in part of the all material list, just to have a stockpile in classrooms or at community events. And I was going to do the same thing over here with the tape. Feel free to fast forward as needed right here as I roll the tape. Just fast forward about 15 seconds or so. All right, so now that is finished. Now it says it's now at step 6. Basically, we're going to be attaching the motor to the actual bottom of the frame. Or actually, I'm sorry, the top of the frame. So I'm going to take these pieces. Now, if you notice here, these pieces are wooden. Just easily and very gently, because these things are sensitive, just break out your pieces. You can easily break a piece as well, so do be cautious. But for the most part, these break extremely easy, and you can just go around the edges and push and bend as needed. And this will be the base of the car. Now granted, like I mentioned, this one is going to look much different than one I have before. Thought I was buying the same thing, so it's going to be interesting to see how this looks compared to how this looks, just because this one has some really cool sides. So I will definitely be checking into the link next time. Just happened to be thinking that I was buying that one. Now granted, this could be potentially, and now that I think about it, this one I believe came out of what's called a 5-pack. meaning that it had 5 items to build. And if you notice, so that one came in a plastic bag, and which is there where the remote control wiring are. And there's one, how this one looks is similar. We'll be doing a video of this one soon, of the traffic light. So this, I do believe the reason this car is much different is the other one I bought as a singular item. This one can be bought in a pack of 5 for roughly about $16. The link will be in the comments below, and the details of the post. Just going off mind without having that link to see price, I believe it's about $16 or so for a pack of 5. So it works out perfect for having a lot of kits all at once. Now, there's nothing really you can do with the excess. Decomposition is always a good thing, to throw this in with some potting soil that you're potentially making with your class. It's a really good way to add in mulch. I would just break it up into smaller pieces, and I'm just going to personally set this aside for now. All right, so first step is it's going to have me take the RC motor, and through one end, it looks like I'm going to be connecting the smaller piece onto it. And if you notice, it has the wires going up. And so this one you got to push a little hard to get to fit over the base. I recommend holding it like this. There's a difference between it just squeezing and a pop. And then on the next one, this one will be very interesting to remember how to do. This one's much larger. And I need to see, here's the difference too. These wires need to go up. So I actually need to rotate this around. The reason being is wires go up, the piece on the bottom snaps into the wood. So do make sure you focus there that the pieces that pop in are going facing downwards. Same thing on this side. You just basically put it over that edge. I recommend just squeezing from both of the sides here, making sure it's good and snug. Now on the car, there's not really much to of a difference for bottom or not. Now, personally, these pieces are very thin, slight little bend in it. I'm gonna put it on the one on the bottom that looks more like a bottom than what's really been sanded down. So then I'm going to make sure that if you look at the diagram, there's a giant, what's called the gear groove. So I'm gonna rotate my car around here to fit and match how the step-by-step instruction does. I'm gonna put my cords that way just to keep them out of the way. I'm basically going to set in the edges here into the two little things. Make sure you line them up really good. Slightly just wiggle as needed and just squeeze them in. Hold from the back and just squeeze a little bit and they'll go right in. Now, it looks like after this, you will be adding on the sides to the car, which hold in the metal rails. Now, if you notice here, these are more or less held in by things that go through, that snaps in for part of the frame. On this car, it's going to be a little different to where I will actually be putting these onto the car. Now, if you take this is going to be at the rear, turn it upside down, and if you look into the settings on here, it says first install the 2-plate on the plate with 4 cross grain screws. Oh, I actually missed that. That's why this is questionable. Alrighty. So it looks like you're gonna barely open this pack. For personal reasons, I'm going to spill it out onto this larger bag just because these screws are extremely tiny. Now, if you notice, there's some screws that are larger, some that are much smaller, and those plastic orange pieces. So in this situation, I'm going to take the smallest piece. Now, what it's having us do is it's basically having us mount this motor into the bottom of the car. Like most cars in real life are mounted, this one's going to go right into that sectional groove. And you're going to want to make sure that you don't push the wood out. And so I recommend holding it from the back, putting 2 hands here, and just squeezing as you can apply pressure without messing up the wire or breaking the frame. It is best if you hold it upside down and just do this. Found out it's a way better to hold it, and it's always righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. And you're just gonna tighten it real snug and then get you another one and repeat. And see, these screws can be lost very easy, so it's always good to have something around you that can catch them. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. All right, those are now drilled in, and that is in place. So next it shows that we will be turning it upside down, more or less, and putting the metal frames into the top of the car. Now something just fell off back here. I actually found one of the other small screwdrivers. As I mentioned, build up a collection. And so let's see. It shows the larger piece going off towards the front. So I'm going to line these up right here. Not much a difference of inside or outside. And then do the same thing over here. So the motor's here. This is going backwards. If you look at it the way it's upside down, it shows that track right here on their car. Which is now interesting because if I'm holding it like this, it's opposite. So I'm curious as if it was flipped over, it looks like more of this setting of how that looks from the bottom. The only reason this could personally matter is just based off how everything lines up and which way the car is facing forward. So since I'm not too far into it and don't want to mess anything up, I'm just going to unscrew these. And this is where you figure out problem solving. Sometimes with these instructions, there's not very clear, and you've got to do it off video or just off visual, which is why I am doing this tutorial. So if you look at step 8 on how the bottom is, it basically has this where we had it here this way. So all I'm going to do is just turn the wiring on the motor, or turn the motor itself for how it pops in, and just re-pop it in. So it's always good to take a look at the visuals and see it. This is just a simple way of problem solving. It's going to be natural in any type of these kits to where you're going to notice a few things different. And in this case, I don't know personally that it will make much of a difference which side this is on when we put the motor in there. Huh. This is interesting again. So if it's here, there we go. Keep forgetting that you got to look at it in the way from this with step 8. These little screws are very small. If possible, I do recommend for any project, purchase a very small magnetic screwdriver. These, however, do not come magnetic. I am looking in a way to potentially create a tutorial on how to make these tiny screwdrivers magnetic because they are perfect. They do have magnetic screwdrivers out here this size, and so I will also be looking in potentially purchasing it, but how much cooler would it be to be able to make your own magnetic screwdriver? And as I'm doing this, I'm just going to double check that this one's pushed in real tight. Tighten up that top one just to make sure. Go ahead and snug up the other one. Now it keeps spinning. Basically, it's not going to completely catch. And now I'm going to go in. And it looks like I will basically be sticking the motor here. Attaching this on. Now, there's going to be a reason of why I went ahead and put that motor in, this being one of them. These things are also sensitive to basically put in. This is going to help me ensure that everything is lined up and good to go, because these are sometimes, as you can see, hard to slide through. Now what this is going to do is going to allow me to be able to sit this in, keep everything tight and in place until I'm able to go in and screw everything into place. And so it gets a little hard to push, you just gotta be sensitive with it. And now that this is in place and holding on, I'm gonna go over back onto this side, make sure that motor rotates that other white one, and I'm gonna go in and add my screws back in. Now on these, it doesn't say if it is gonna be the larger screw or the smaller screw. Since there's so much more of the smaller screws than there is of the longer ones, I'm going to use the smaller one on this one. Granted, it is holding in basically part of the frame that holds the axis, but I have a strong feeling that we'll need those elsewhere. Now, my personal recommendation, just to make this easy to hold, put you one in right here at the top right first. These things do, as you can see, pop out and causes issue with the screw. Now, some people will put this on the screwdriver, place it in, so whatever works best, but this is a very easy way for a kid to lose patience when that screw keeps falling out. So you always want to try and find the easiest route possible with innovation and problem solving to get that screw to stay right there. Oh wait, this is magnetic, interesting. Well, if this sucker's magnetic, so maybe this new one's magnetic. Let's just test the other one. So this one's got it on. Let's test the other one that's from a previous project to see if it's magnetic. Well, wish I'd have known that one on that one before. So now I am learning that these are magnetic, so it solves a lot of issues for me, but they don't hold too well. Yeah, now it's not even picking this up. So maybe there's some type of static that got into it. I don't know. This is very interesting to see that it was picking it up and now it's barely holding it. So we'll go ahead and screw that in. Now the reason I was talking earlier, if I'm gonna start with this one, is that way I don't have to hold these things too hard. I'm gonna go and screw it in. So it's kind of like how you take off a tire, basically do it in almost a star pattern. It's also how you tighten lugs, basically do it in a star pattern. And so I done the bottom now left first, and we'll go ahead and do up here, do the top right. And then that way, as you can see, I'm not having to hold the other board. I'm just doing everything in order. Now here, there's not much of a star, so whichever side you do next, not too much of a matter. You just want to go ahead and get those screws in. Do leave some comments on how this angle of how I'm holding it looks. Currently, I am not looking at my phone to see how it looks. More than likely, I'm assuming that my hand is hiding a decent part of the screen, but basically I'm just putting these screws in and screwing them in. Now I do feel that that one went in a lot tighter. Potentially I used a much longer screw, so I am going to feel that I guess I'll just have to be left with leaving that one in there, and we'll have to compromise elsewhere. Now here's where it gets fun, because that little tiny metal piece of the RC motor is right in the way for my fingers. So this does take some patience, of course, of getting those lined up into the holes and put in. Now here, I've got everything put on, and I am going to go ahead and put in the other metal bar through the frame. As you can notice, I have already misplaced one of the metal bars, it appears, and so I will, oh, actually no, it was hiding from me. There we go. And so I'm gonna go ahead and stick this one right through here as well. Now it shows, as you can see, those yellow caps are gonna go on the ends. My recommendation, hold it with your finger here, because when you go to push it on, it does not go off too well. And you want to kind of leave it on loose to where you can also make this tighter later on as needed when adjusting for the frames. So for now, the back ones I'm going to go ahead and tighten up. You can kind of tell that there's a little bit difference on these two in size for which side has more coming out. So I'm going to make it as even as possible. And I'm going to go ahead and fasten on these as well. Now, as you can see, so far the largest trouble has primarily been those small bolts. They are not fun nor enjoyable at all. So we'll go ahead and slide this one down as well. Now that I have this, I'm going to flip over to the next side and visually look at it. Everything looks pretty well good to go. And then now we're getting into the larger stuff for adding in the battery pack. Now looking at this, it has my battery pack setting, like has it setting that way. And I'm going to be adding in the battery pack first. It shows that it's going to be with the metal bar facing out. And I'm going to basically line up these two holes to what appears to be the very top one. So you're going to line it up to where there's one up here near the spring. The other one's going to be right here. Now this is the fun part. This is definitely the one where I want to use one of the longer screws. This is where it does get annoying, trying to get these tiny little screws to go into the battery pack. Now here's the cool thing. This thing is now starting to look to be less magnetized. Not for sure what was going on there earlier. So it's got a little bit of magnetize in it. A good way I've always learned is just get it inside. Try and hold it where you can see that first dot. Hold your thing extremely still and see if you can just pinch that down in that hole. And by holding it with your two fingers at the top, you can keep that hole lined up there. And I'm not going to do it all the way tight, but just because I'm going to have to adjust this, get the other one in. Same thing, I'm going to try and just basically pinch it, push it down in there. And then that way it holds as I'm trying to get the tiny screwdriver set into this. Alrighty. Now next it shows basically putting on and attaching this onto the board. And it has a spot that shows to where this white cord is going to fasten in. Metal piece here. And so you're going to basically bend the wires line up the bottom left and top right. I am all out of tall screws, so this will be a little fun. Sometimes the screws don't matter as much for when and where you're putting it. And here's the awesome part to where having two hands would definitely be needed. Now just due to how easy this screw can fall off and how annoying this can be, I'm going to try and do my best to hold it on as I'm lining this up. This is definitely a part to where teamwork can be extremely useful for holding this and lining it up. So I'm going to try and go back to just basically placing it in through the hole with my fingers and then tighten it, not too hard, just because it's going to lift that other side and I need it to hold and catch. And I'm going to do the same with the other side. Now it shows here that that wire is going to go right there into that top hole. Another way to know that you have it lined up properly is to essentially ensure that you have that one didn't want to go in the hole much larger, so I do think that those longer screws go here. Just as a note to others who may be doing this at home or in the classroom, the longer screws go on this board. That way it can properly hold this down inside. And I'm going to stop and take a small drink here. Now, it shows basically, and as you can see, that screw is not holding. So I'm going to go and see if I have a larger one left. Take this smaller one out. I'm just essentially going to try and turn it upside down, flick it out. Put this larger bolt in its position, looking through the bottom to line it up into the hole pre-made for it. And I am going to have to hold it a little bit better to get it to screw in, and try not to break the board or the corner over here. So then the next step, which is now going to be the extremely fun part, is taking the wire. You will notice a key difference in the wiring, one being extremely straight and one being bent. So if you were to take the guess of which one would go where would you think that which one would go on the end of the thing? The straight one, the one with the giant L. Probably the giant L, since it's going to be in a car, and this one's going to be pointing straight off of the remote. So we go in, grab this other screw. This part is tricky because you're basically lining up both one cord, another cord, and the screw. So I'm gonna go ahead and adjust this wire as I need it on that white one, to where basically it's gonna be sitting right here, ready to be lined up. I'm gonna set this right over top of it, allowing the wood to basically guide where it's being held at. And now I can't have it completely right over, and this is where those wiring is going to be a nuisance. So I'm going to set this up as best as I can, which is where maybe another screwdriver, another sets of hands can come in favor. Any recommendations for hacks for getting these two to line up much easier, feel free to leave those in the comments for people to see. I do have a feeling that I should just take electrical tape and tape these two together for them to fit. And you can hear my dog's magical scratching. Now, since I'm stuck holding this, I'm gonna see what I can do for getting this back onto the screwdriver. Not for sure if you've seen that, for how I just got it back on the screwdriver with one hand. Doing my best not to drop it off, and there we go. So sometimes it just takes a little bit of patience. You're gonna screw this one down pretty tight, just so, since these two have to connect very well. All right, from that point, it essentially just has us pop on the wheel. You want to be kind of careful pushing, and so you're going to make this one back a little bit. now this wheel isn't the best to go on, so you do have to push decently hard. Now that you have one wheel on, the other side is much easier to do. Just to simply line it up. Be careful not to squeeze the while it's bending or the wrong way. And just keep your thumb in the middle and use both to push each other. Now maybe this one doesn't need a wire, since this motor is going to connect pretty well easily to this. And that could potentially be why the other one needed it. Because I don't see the rubber band on this one. Now it does say to take the metal piece and pinch it back. And let's go ahead and add in our wing. Yeah, they've definitely changed this one up, much different. This wing assembles into it a different way. Hold from the bottom, barely squeeze in. Go ahead and line it up with the other one as best as you possibly can. Has that going forward. So the tail piece is going to have the arrows pointing forward. And this is where things get complicated, where some things get in your way. Some things are a little flimsy for trying to add it on. I'm not going to do it too hard since I need to. There we go. Now it's going to have me take 2 screws. This little screwdriver don't like to hold it much. Basically line it up into it, trying not to lose a very, very small screw in the floor. And as you can see, the wood piece fell off and my screw just fell on the floor as well. These things can be slightly annoying for how small these screws are, but they are extremely fun projects, and the more you do, the easier it gets. I may not find that screw. There's a good chance I won't. I did find a helicopter blade, however, I don't see an extra screw, so potentially something will be going without the screw. Good chance I will just do one of this without missing a screw and hope that potentially there's extras. Because realistically, this isn't too important for the structure. So actually, I'm just going to take 2, put them here, and then if I need one, I can take one out or find the other one by then. So I'm just going to tighten that in, using my pinky to basically hold the front of the car down since I haven't put on the front wheels. Using this to get it lined up and just making sure that it goes tight. This one I noticed it wasn't even pushed down when I put the screw in. So I'm going to loosen the screw, lefty loosey. Put my finger on that. This video is a little bit longer. I am hoping that I could potentially speed it up. That way there's more of the actual step-by-step. But we are still learning a lot of that, and I potentially need to get a editor. Now on these, it is a good idea to go ahead and just put them both on. And then like before, just basically squeeze on each other until you know that they're all the way down. Be careful not to go too hard and break it. Typically, while I recommend this to twist, and I can see that I poked a little hard and that one came through all the way. So big difference of noticing. Basically, that is now finished. Not as much to it as the previous one for other parts. Also considering that this one has the RC, the battery pack up there. The other one has it at the bottom, so not the best for going through water. Messes up your batteries, have to get new ones. And so now I'm going to set this here and begin working on the remote control pack. Remote control pack seems to be similar. These, I do know that it's a little bit of a tighter space working with. So there's some tricks I'm going to try and show you for how to get some of the screws in on the tighter spots. Once again, there's this leftover frame. If your school does, you know, compost, just throw that in there with it. Don't need to waste. Ooh, what does this go to? This is interesting. I don't even see it in the diagram for where it goes. If I were to take a potential guess, let's see here. I don't see anything in the pictures how it looks. So maybe this is just an extra piece broke off. Not exactly for sure. I mean, it does fit in here. So let's go with that for now. Yeah, we'll just go with that for now, for how that fits in. So don't really see it anywhere else on the bottom or anything. Yeah, it's not really shown anywhere. Alrighty, so the remote controller, I'm gonna basically do the same thing. I'll go ahead and get some of this preset out and ready to go. I'm gonna go ahead and pinch these to where I have enough wire to connect the two together. It says burn and use a lighter. Not really much of a need to. All right, so now on the picture, if you notice, this board right here has this dot facing here, meaning that we will be running the wires through this. It's always a good thing to go ahead and do it ahead of time. So we'll be running the wires through this one hole. Make sure all your wires are as straight as possible, because if not, you'll get a few that bend. There we go. Well, this would be interesting. Remember how I put those on earlier, thinking they were the different one? They stayed on there, so I didn't happen to notice they got turned. Just to hit it with my elbow. A few of the wires got bent back. These are really flimsier wires too. Make really well, easy to wrap with the harder and stiffer wires. So in some situation, it has its perks, holding the electrical current. Other situations, it more or less just holds a annoyance. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull those through, bring up this guy up here. Now, why am I doing this? What it does is it's gonna make it to where this can line up much better. Now on this one, I'm gonna set it flat And what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try and essentially put this on the end of the screwdriver. It looks like it's magnetized. Line myself up with it, trying to scoop it in there. Go ahead and snug that tight. Another way to doing this is, let's say that you just take one of the screws, ensure that it's lined up, drop it down on there. If you can't get it, just basically I'm not for sure what just went flying at me. So I just typically take my finger and try and guide it down in there. Wow, almost at a minute here, I think. Not exactly for sure, can't see the timer too well. So I'm gonna go ahead and screw that in there. Everything's good to go. I'm gonna go ahead and connect this on the top. It's looking like it's just gonna be red to red, black to black. Imagine that. Because the white's also the antenna. And so I'm gonna take the one with the battery pack, wrap it around the other one. Reason being is the other one has much stiffer wires. And yeah, I'm just gonna make sure to twist as much as this I can around. In this situation, definitely gonna reuse the electrical tape, just because those ones that slide over, sometimes they get it pretty decently, but with electric tape, I can know that when I have a good spin on it. I've got it tied right, basically, with the electric tape, ensuring that the wires continue to be where they need to be. Do pay attention to stuff like that, to where some of the wires is more prominent at one end, and just essentially cover it up. Same thing again on this one. This one I've got the wire a little bit shorter than what it was on the other one. And as you can see there, that wire came off, which is why I'm also recommending to essentially use electrical tape just to be safe, because this one continues to fall off. So I'm going to try and pinch a little bit more off of there, just so that way I have more to wrap around. And go for another piece of Scotch tape, or Scotch tape, oh Lord, electrical tape. All right, so now that that is done, basically it more or less skips sets, but you're gonna put this essentially where it lines up as a screw in the center. And so for this one, it's even more difficult considering you have 2 of the buttons right there. But if you just hold it with your fingers, line it up, drop it in there pretty nice. Always try and see underneath if you're still lined up with the exact hole. And then same as always, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, so in this case, righty. Shows to fasten these in. I'm gonna take my, well, and that's another reason that you want to use some of the right wires. So on this one, gotta make sure that you use one of the taller wires or taller screws. I forgot about that with these plates. Taller screw is well needed. So you're just gonna hold it and with your fingertips, drop it down in there. There we go. Make sure it's nice and snug. Then I'm just going to take these, basically just hold it up, put this inside of here. These are a little bit more snug, so you want to kind of push hard as needed. Now, one thing here, I will say, I do need to go ahead and put this antenna on first before putting the other wood piece on at all. So this part's going to be a little bit harder with getting this one to set right there. That way I can pause and grab the screwdriver and the screw needed. We'll see if I can drop it down in to the wiring loops, ensuring that both are overlapping each other. Got it into the loops, and now I'm just going to stand it up and twist. And then I will take this piece, has the curvature over it, and set that inside the hole, and just essentially make sure it goes in place. Now, I need to tuck in these wires a little bit some. So make sure to try and stick them away from the buttons where it doesn't get into its functioning way. As well as basically try to also get it to where the controller modules go on the thing very easily. And so these will basically fasten. Just give it a good little push, and then you'll hear it click. So if you do this and hear it click, you know you're in good business. Oh, there it is. I was about to say, I already dropped a very important part. Now with this one, see how it has the 3 knobs? And put your 3 knobs basically facing that same way. making sure that one of them doesn't fall off. And then you're just going to pop this into place very lightly, because as you notice, that one just shot wood and broke. And you are all set. Now all you need to do is, it mentions screwing in the top and bottom pieces of the remote. I won't go ahead and do that, but I'm only going to do the top where the buttons are, since I already got the bottom took care of. Just kind of mash it in there a little bit. Go ahead and set that in. And I still got some screws left, so I'll put those into the leftover box, because I do know screws go missing all the time. Alrighty. Now I am curious of what this one ends up doing, because before it was essentially just laid like that. And now we're ready for some batteries. So part of our materials will be having a large amount of batteries as well. We will have various packs and types, and we are looking into ways of finding kits that are similar to these to basically, instead of battery packs, be a solar panel and it provide that to the RC motor. We just got to figure out how to do that, since some of these do it, and there's no way to just stop the RC car from moving. It just continues to power it, because the solar panel is wired directly to it. So I'm going to take two here. One way I show the kindergartner, the base always goes to the spring, because it needs something to push. These things are a little small, so sometimes the batteries don't feel like they want to fit. It's got to be a little push of, give them a little push. And so outside of some of those screws, most of this is fairly easy. I'm assuming that some of those things over here for the zip ties are just essentially to keep the wires together. I'm gonna make sure that I do the same here with the flat to the base and help it get kicked in. And let's see how it works. So I'm guessing there is a wiring issue or something going on. With it. Or maybe there's a chance that my wheels are too tight. So let me loosen this up here some. See if that helps some with the wheels being on too tight. It is a very plausible reason, because if I notice I try and turn this, it turns easy this way, but when you try and turn by the bar, see how this bar is really smooth and easy? This bar don't want to turn too easy, but it wants to turn easy with the wheels. So I'm going to go with the assumption that basically we've got these wheels on too hard, and this becomes the difficult part of trying to do this without breaking any of it. So I'm going to take this off camera, just since I need to hold these a little bit tighter to get those tires loosened up. I'm just basically pulling on the tires to get them a little bit loose, and let's see if that works. And I can always take this out here if needed. I'd have to get around that to basically test if this thing is working decently. That's another issue of putting stuff in. See, I can't get to that. And I would have to take all of this completely off, which is not hard at all. And so I'm going to take these wheels completely off of the car, just since it is making it a little bit of a struggle for them to turn. And this is part of all of it, of just learning basically how to problem solve and figure out what's wrong. Because I highly doubt personally that it would be a wiring issue, just due to the fact of how I tape the wires together using these little sleeves here. Typically there's a better chance for the wires to be messed up. And so what I'm going to try and do is basically ensure that these turn. Now I'm noticing this one's turning much harder than this one. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take these off, being as gentle as I can while applying force. And I'm essentially just going to switch these out. Now, why am I doing that? Well, just because it looks like this one's much thicker than this one. And so for this motor to turn, it's got to have so much force. Now, since I'm doing it this way, I'm essentially just going to take this one. Oh, it's already got one there. Never mind. I left it on there like that. And so I'm just going to replace those front from the back. Basically, since that one looks much skinnier when I was turning it on the back, I'm just going to lightly put these over into position while sliding down. And here's how we know if this is working. So that is telling me something with the wiring in the remote is potentially faulty. Now granted, this stuff is easy, even though we want to have everything perfect, not everything turns out perfect. And so I'm going to walk through basically diagnosing what could potentially be the problem. Because there's multiple things that it could be. Could be the wiring on the RC motor. And so I want to take this off and check some things out to see what could potentially help. As I'm looking at the wiring on the RC motor, it's looking like it's fairly tight to the connection on the motor, but you can never know. Slightest little loose connection with these types of wires can create a very difficult mistake to do. So what I want to do to test this, instead of going in and taking out the remote just yet, peeled off that wiring. What I'm going to do is I'm going to basically hold this from the back of that wiring as the best as I can. Get it up behind that wiring for the little metal clip. Get it to stick. Roll him over, and squeeze. just sense that I am hoping that this is the issue, that it's just not connecting into the RC motor well. You gotta be careful not to break those little clips off. So I'm curious as to what exactly is going on with this. Very interesting, because these batteries are also new. So now I'm curious as to the potential what and why. A lot of that could go into multiple things. So maybe it's something to do with the remote. So I'm going to take it apart. Now, granted, I know this thing will work. There is always chance of faultiness, but I'm going to show how it can be problem solved. We're already this far into the video. May as well go ahead and do a little investigating. Now, I think I may have potentially found the culprit, because if you notice, the red wiring right here is stuck under here. And I noticed some loose wiring. So I'm going to take these out. And yes, there is our culprit. There is the problem and the issue for why it's essentially not working. And so sometimes it just takes a little bit of extra problem solving. And so what I'm going to do is this time wrap as much and push back, and wrap it and push it back. That way we can keep some more of the wire. So this should eventually fix it. Now do you see and notice there how easy that just came off of the wiring? And so it can be simple mistakes, is basically just moving this wiring around, folding it inside of this case, made the wiring loose. So if you happen to see a similar issue of this with yours, potential recommendation is to check your remote control for the wiring being loose, just since they have to be folded and put into the case. And now I'm going to get a more thin piece and what I'm going to do essentially, so I'm going to squeeze these together and put this here. I'm going to flip it over. I'm essentially just going to tape it and then go from there. Now, before closing it all the way in, take a look back at this, and it still does not move. So there is potential that that red wire is completely messed up and may not be working, because this would be the first one of these cars to have this issue, to where it did not work for some unknown reason. Oh, that's what it was. So the wiring, and then also you want to make sure that this metal piece is down. The metal piece being down. Was down earlier before I messed with this wiring, but forward, backwards, and I'm basically going to put this back together. Now, problem solving can include multiple things. For example, I messed with the problem solving of the remote itself and forgot that I lifted this one up, meaning that when it was moved up, it wasn't allowing the connection of the current to flow through regularly. So let me put these back on here. Go ahead and add our wheels back on. Make these back on, make them just a little bit snugger. Be careful not to push them through the rim like I just done. Don't want them too snug. These things are extremely easy to pop through. And so just gonna lighten up this some as I can, just because and going to put these wires back in as gently as possible, and even figure 8 if possible. So this time I'm going to lay them to where they're bent like this, but the part where the tape is not bent, like so, basically into the curvature of the box. And so discouragement can come, issues can arise with these toy kits, and I mean sometimes they're very easy to go back and figure out what's wrong. I mean, typically, most of the time, it's just a loose wire. You know, you may not find it very quickly for the loose wiring, but in that case, I seen the wires hanging out of the tape and knew that it was the wires. These things do have a little bit of good power. That it went backwards on its own. So I can probably get this case a little too tight, yeah. For around that button, or potentially the board's not moved up far enough forward. I personally like the BattleBot that is also on our channel. Actually, it's on our Future Innovators page on Facebook, to where the little boy got to build the BattleBot, control the axe, and can basically make it actually spin in a donut. Versus this one is essentially just forward and back. And if you notice, it's got quite a bit of power, so I'm just going to barely lightly hold this. Now, granted, if this was on carpet or something, that sucker would be flies, basically doing burnouts. Personally, I kind of wish that they would have put this as a real-world drive, just because that is insane. That is a lot of power for this little thing. And so, as you can see, some key differences here in the structural design. This one, the motor is in the back. Oop, I'm doing the wrong one. Oh wow, watch this. So look, one controller. You ready? So this one is the one I've just put together. The reason I know it's got screws in it. All right, now watch. And I'm not touching it. Somehow both the controllers are connecting to that one. Potentially these batteries are dead. Who knows? There's no on and off switches for these things, but that is insanely cool that, for example, this one is the one I just put together. Screws. This is the one that came with the other one. No screws. Also, if you look at the key differences, this one's got that one on the top. This one has that one on the bottom. That is insane. And welcome to our tutorial.